Hello again, and welcome back to another episode of the Maltego Essentials series. As always, have a look in the description of this video for more information about other videos in this series, as well as our website and contact information. In this video, we will be learning all the basic ways of navigating around a graph. Navigating Maltego efficiently can greatly improve the effectiveness of using the tool. I encourage you to pause the video and try out the different methods to become acquainted with them. We have a lot to cover, so without further ado, let's dive right in. Navigation is primarily driven using a mouse, and for this reason, we highly recommend using an external mouse as opposed to a trackpad. We have seen, however, that some users are super proficient with trackpads, but as the gestures differ for different devices, we encourage you to explore combinations of hard and soft tapping, 1, 2, and 3 finger dragging, and so on. Who knows, maybe on your device, simply asking it nicely might work as well. To follow along with this video, you can use any graph that you already have, but I will show you how to open up a pre-populated example graph so that you can see and try the same things I will be doing. With Maltego open, simply go to the application icon, click on the Tools menu, and then on Open Example Graph. The example graph is essentially a basic footprint of the Maltego domain's infrastructure, with some additional detail thrown in. Some entities have been bookmarked and some have notes on them. Don't worry if you don't know how to use these effectively yet, we will get to that in an upcoming video. In the top right of Maltego, you should see an Overview tab. In this little window, you can see a miniature version of the entire graph. If you do not see this, go to the Windows tab at the top near the middle of the window and click on the Overview button to bring it back up. The first way to navigate around Maltego is to simply click and drag inside the Overview window. This will move the area currently visible in the graph around. Especially for large graphs, this is often the easiest way to get where you need to go, as you can always see the entire graph at a glance in this window. Alternatively, and this is the method that we use the most, use the right mouse button to click and drag the graph itself around. Remember that you can select an entity by simply clicking on it or dragging a box around one or more with the left mouse button. Select any entity now and try moving around the graph using your keyboard's cursor key. Using the arrow keys changes the selected entity to one that is nearest in the direction of the arrow key and is another way to traverse the graph if you do not mind changing your selection. If you are using the recommended external mouse, chances are that you have a mouse wheel. You can use this to zoom in and out of the graph. Notice how the graph zooms in and out around the area where you are pointing. If you don't have a mouse wheel, or if you are using a trackpad, you'll most likely be able to use the pinch gesture to zoom in and out, but you might also have to try various multi-finger methods. On the right-hand side of the Investigate tab, there are other zoom-specific buttons that can also help. Hover over the magnifying glass icons for a description of what each one does. The plus and minus icons are easy, they zoom you in and out. The other two very useful options are the Zoom to Fit and Zoom to Selection buttons. Hover over these to also get keyboard shortcuts. They are very handy to memorize. Zoom to Selection does exactly what it says. With a few entities selected, you can quickly click this button or press Ctrl or Command W to zoom to the selected entities. Zoom to Fit, on the other hand, will fit the entire graph on the workspace. We will now change focus a bit to different mechanisms for selecting entities. The two most useful selection methods are Select by Type and Select Bookmarked. The Select by Type drop-down menu is populated with a list of all the entity types on the graph and is often a useful way to select all the entities of a specific type to run the same transform on, such as selecting a DNS name to run the true IP address transform. Bookmarks, on the other hand, is a neat feature that you can use to mark entities on the graph for further investigation or to indicate that something is interesting about the entity. The Select by Bookmark option makes it easy to quickly find them again. The combination of Select by Type or Select Bookmarked, followed by the Zoom to Selection option, is a combination that is often useful to go to parts of the graph for further investigation. The majority of the Investigate tab in Maltego is taken up by the various selection buttons, and it will be beneficial to learn some of them. We already looked at the Select by Type and Bookmarked, but let's focus on the rest of them for a bit. Some of them are self-explanatory, such as select all or invert selection. The rest can be divided into add or select options. The add options, such as add children, will keep your current entity selected and add to that selection the child nodes of the selected entity. Conversely, the select options, such as the select children, will simply change the selection to the child nodes and forget about the entities that was currently selected. A parent node is an entity that has a link pointing towards the selected node, and a child node is an entity that has a link pointing away from the current node. Selecting the www.maltego.com entity, for example, and then using the Select Parent option will select the maltego.com domain entity instead. If you had the www.maltego.com website entity selected and chose Select Children, the 4 IP addresses would have been highlighted. Select Neighbor simply selects both parents and children. There is a neat little trick to finding the shortest path between two selected entities, which could be interpreted as the easiest way to relate two pieces of information to each other. The option is called Add Path. To test it on this example graph, select the Microsoft company entity and the maltego.com domain entity, and then click Add Path. Maltego will now automatically highlight all the entities that are on the shortest path, or if there are multiple paths that are equal in length to the shortest path, it will highlight all of these paths. There is one more advanced trick that is often very useful for transforms returning multiple types of entities. But to show you this, we need to first create a new graph to illustrate it a little bit better. Start by opening a new graph using the New Graph icon at the top left of the window. In the Entity palette on the left, find the domain entity and drag that onto the graph. Leaving the default value as is, run the ToEntities from Whois IBM Watson transform. This will return all kinds of information. Say you wanted to select all the email entities, you could simply select one and then use the Add Similar Siblings option to add the other email addresses to the selection. In this case, using the Select by Type menu and the Email Addresses option would have also worked, but if you had multiple domains and other unrelated email addresses also on the graph, using the Sibling Selection option is the easiest to contain the scope of the selection to the other children of my parents, as in my siblings. That is quite enough for now. I encourage you to review this video as many times as necessary to become familiar with the various methods of selection. And as with the rest of the series, come back to it periodically if you need a refresher. As with all things, practice makes perfect. Until next time, cheers.